Hello, everybody. Well, the Sarah Boone trial did not disappoint. There was justice for George, which is so refreshing. I watch these trials and I wonder, will people really think and see it the way I see it? And, then there's other trials I'm like, oh goodness, I would have really, really hate to be on that jury to have to give a verdict because it's difficult. In this situation, hands down, Sarah Boone is in a category. Not sure what category, but she's in one. And I understand that the prosecution has a job to do, but the reaction today of Attorney Owens came out so uncaring. Do attorneys get to where they have no compassion for the victim because they're trying to get their client off on a lesser charge or get them off completely? Um, I had my feelings about Sarah Boone from the very beginning, but after the videos that were showed yesterday by the defense, you needed no words, none. And then the reading of the text messages. What would have been interesting is to go back through the text messages or Messenger and see how many different times the police were called that coincided with her fits, so to speak, on Facebook. Sarah Boone is a middle aged woman whose marriage fell apart. And I mean no disrespect whatsoever for George. But to sit on the stand and say how handsome he was, and I mean, it's like she was in this la la land of everything. And then to hear even further how their first date supposedly went, that was pretty bad. But one of the things that really got to me out of the whole trial was the prosecution's reaction to the family not being able to sit in the courtroom when they thought they could. The family knew what was going to be shown. They wanted to be there to support George, justice for George, and to be with other family members. And unfortunately, the horrific sounds of this young man, middle aged man, begging and pleading that he couldn't breathe. If I was his mom, I may would have thought I could handle it too. Maybe I had enough in me that I wanted to see her convicted so badly that I felt I could be there. I do think that the outburst that happened, however, well, Owens, I think the family was in there for that. And I just want to play it because, Mr. Owens, I understand that you had a very difficult client. I understand that you only had 45 days to prepare for your case. We all understand why. Sarah Boone had been through 9 attorneys, most likely because they told her that the defense she wanted wasn't going to work, and it didn't. We know that her defense was what she wanted because otherwise she wouldn't have dealt with you. Sarah Boone, for some reason, appears to be someone who's used to getting her way all the time. And that's my opinion. I don't know why she thinks she's so special, but locked up in a prison is where she belongs. You know, if she honestly thinks nothing's wrong with what she did, that's a major problem. But if you go back to the day George died, back to the afternoon that she found him in the suitcase, she never showed 1 ounce, not 1 ounce of loss, compassion, care. There was no tear shed for George. That was just her trying to say that she didn't mean to do it. She didn't know what happened. So let's listen to this brilliant defense attorney and his opinion that they should have gotten a mistrial. I don't think that's the only case this has ever happened in. I don't think it's the first case, and it certainly won't be the last. But I think if you ever have to address it again, Mr. Owens, maybe have a little compassion for the victim. Maybe have a little compassion for the family. Maybe. I know that's not your place because you're the defense attorney, but to come down like you did, that was just wrong, in my opinion. But let's watch it again. Let's see, do other people feel the same way? I don't know. I don't know. Let me see. It's going to be just a couple seconds before it starts. I'm never right on. I'm so sorry, my husband's coughing.
We are back on the record, 2020 CF 2603, State of Florida versus Sarah Boone. State appearances for the record.
Dave Ketchner on behalf of the state. William J. for Florida, State of Florida. James Owens for Sarah Boone.
Captain Beck on behalf of Sarah Boone.
Tony Henderson, Sarah Boone.
Ms. Boone is still seated at counsel's table wearing the same clothing from this morning. Are we ready to bring in our jury for the defense closing at this time? State.
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense.
Judge, I would like you to give the audience an instruction, and then if you would, instruct the state attorney to instruct whatever family members or friends of George Torres may not be in here, and may not be able to hear the instruction, but may come in during the trial so that we can try to get some order.
Are there any other members of Mr. Torres's family that may be outside that may be joining us?
Oh, no, this isn't it. Hold on.
Okay, all right, so she's left, she's no longer here? Okay, that's what I just asked.
Okay, so that was just a few minutes in the wrong spot. So I'm sorry, but yeah, he's so concerned about the gallery now. Poor Miss Boone. Yeah, no. Okay, this should be it.
Y'all may be seated, thank you. Okay, may proceed.
Sarah Boone's entitled to a fair trial. I think that right has been compromised here today. I don't know who scheduled the two detectives on the front row with the Torres family, who were the family of the victim. But they had to have known to
They
tell
did.
them that the suitcase video, which has been around for 4.5 years, was going to be played during opening statement. And the state attorney's office or the sheriff's department had to advise them, or the victim's advocate had to advise them, that if they couldn't take it in front of a jury that's trying to decide the case, they needed to get out of the courtroom.
And they're sitting
Now,
in there
what
for this.
happened here today should not ever happen. There should be safeguards in place. There's no room for this after 2 weeks of murder trial
6
for something
days.
like that to happen. One of the Torres members of the family audibly, during the 2-minute suitcase video, expressed some kind of emotional reaction. I look back, he or she were bent over in agony, physical pain. The physical pain followed the audible announcement. You can't unring that bell. That's their responsibility to ensure that kind of thing doesn't happen, especially when they know they're going to show a video and the family of the victim is on the front row. I've never heard of such. I asked for a mistrial.
Response.
I've never heard of such a request. The victim's family has the right to be here. They were advised as to what will be used during closing arguments. I cannot make a decision for the victim's family and the homicide survivors as to whether or not they believe they can handle it. She clearly, or he, I don't know, couldn't, and I believe the appropriate thing was done. They left the courtroom. But again, to say this is intentional sabotage and all the accusations that continuously get made are unsubstantiated, and it does not warrant a mistrial. People get warned, and sometimes they misjudge their own emotions. I don't understand what test we are expected to run on homicide survivors, so the motion should be denied.
Motion is denied.
I like how smoothly it was denied, but the way he said it, knowing they were sitting in that courtroom. And also the prosecution, they, they didn't do anything wrong except present evidence against Sarah Reed that convicted her. Most of the evidence was from her own phone. And, you know, if she were granted a new trial, I don't think Mr. Owens realizes how much more the prosecution could have against her by the time another trial were to come up. Because they could have had people testify about George. George apparently never displayed that type of behavior with his ex-wives. The children didn't like her because she didn't like them. It's just so unbecoming, Mr. Owens, so unbecoming. And the prosecution, God, they made some wonderful points because there's clips that we can get that show the next portion that I want to show. I mean, we can put together a lot of clips that add up to what he says. And just 1 second, let me get it. And I'm talking about the prosecutor when they were giving their closing statements. They did phenomenal, in my opinion. Okay, so this is after his outburst that he wanted a mistrial. Now we're going to be concerned about him sitting in the gallery for the verdict, right? Is that what his problem is now? Let's see. And he just, his mannerism. Come on, Mr. Owens. You've lost all compassion for people. Unless they're a killer? I mean, that's just not right. Yeah, I don't know how these other creators find stuff right on the button. Yeah, Sarah wants him to say something.
We are back on the record, 2020 CF 2603, State of Florida versus Sarah Boone. State appearances for the record.
David Ketchner on behalf of the state. William J. for Florida, state of Florida.
James Owens for Sarah Boone.
Captain Beck on behalf of Sarah Boone.
Tony Henderson, Sarah Boone.
Ms. Boone is still seated at counsel's table wearing the same clothing from this morning. Are we ready to bring in our jury for the defense closing at this time? State.
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense.
Judge, I would like you to give the audience an instruction, and then if you would, instruct the state attorney to instruct whatever family members and friends of George Torres may not be in here, and may not be able to hear the instruction, but may come in during the trial, so that we can try to get some order.
Are there any other members of Mr. Torres's family that may be outside that may be joining us? Okay, all right, so she's left, she's no longer here? Okay, that's what I just asked. Is there anyone outside? Okay.
She's outside, but she's not coming back.
Okay, all right. So, members of our gallery, good afternoon. I'm going to please ask you to please contain yourself and not to have any emotional outbursts. We had a minor one, and the person, whoever it was, had a small outburst, then hid next to another family member, and then excused herself during the last during the closing. It seemed to be minor in nature. However, I'm advising everyone that at this time, if you believe that you cannot control yourself or your emotional responses during the defense's closing argument or any rebuttal by the state, I'm going to politely ask you to excuse yourselves at this time. All right, thank you very much. Mr. Owens, anything else, sir?
No, sir?
All right, state.
We're ready.
All right, let's bring back in our panel.
Okay, so I guess he was satisfied. And maybe I'm just wrong, but that right there, when that happened, this is wrong in my opinion. I mean, I get that attorneys have to have some way to cope to handle the jobs that they do. I would assume that if you're a defense attorney, you know that you probably get a lot of guilty people off. But I think if you're a defense attorney, it would also look just a little compassion for the victims of the homicide, those that have suffered great loss because of it. I don't think I would come off as a complete asshole. You were rude, Mr. Owens. You may be very good at what you do, but his family sitting in that courtroom, you see, they already understood and they already knew who Sarah Boone was. A Sarah Boone you've never met. A Sarah Boone we saw in the videos. I mean, poor George sound asleep, and here she comes with a camera chewing his butt out, asking where her keys are. Imagine that on a day-to-day basis. Go take a walk. What, me? Right now? As he's sitting there just enjoying his afternoon. Yeah, right now, go take a walk. Is he a first grade student, a second grade student, or has he made it into school yet, Sarah? I can see why she's no longer married. Just Nana's opinion. All right, so I shall be back. Bye.